I hope everyone has their notebook open, ready to go. One quick note, I'm going to be sharing, or I'm going to be asking for times for you to share your ahas. Can you make sure that while you are experiencing these ahas, that you're actually writing down right next to it, aha. That way, when we do open it up, you guys can get quick hitters out and share what you've learned today. I also want to see, we've got 47 people online. I don't know, a dozen in here, maybe a little bit more. Can you go ahead and write, or if you're in the room, raise your hand if you've been to this session before? I think you guys can raise your hand on Zoom as well. So either in the chat or on Zoom.
Jennifer. Yeah, Jennifer, Gladys, and Cindy, so we'll both hand raising.
Very good. Awesome. Zoom, no. Awesome. All right, so why don't we go ahead and get into today's content. It's going to be a little bit different if you've been through it before. Why is it different? I'll go ahead and open it up to the room. Can they hear on Zoom through the room? Do we have like mics in here?
Yep.
So they can hear.
So if people in the room are talking, they can hear through the mics in the ceiling.
Awesome.
Yep.
Cool. So why is it that we're changing this session up from what we've normally done? Any ideas from anyone, either online or in Zoom? 60-some people.
Market's in a different place.
Yeah.
There we go.
Exactly.
Has anyone experienced that there's a couple more buyers out there than there are sellers today?
Yep.
The market has changed, therefore we need to change. We're going to be talking investors who might be wanting to sell. Very, very true, Mary. We actually just were talking about that downstairs when we were making our calls. Like, we are experiencing investors going, you know what, if I am going to sell, now's the time. I mean, a lot of these investors bought these homes for 30, 40, 50,000. Cindy is saying I am very muffled.
Okay.
Is there anything we can do with any of that?
Let me take a look. Yeah, keep going.
Very good. Thank you, Cindy. Let us know if it does get cleared up if you can. Anyways, back to what's changing in the market and what we have to do to change it. The market changes, we have to change with it. We've got a lot of investors saying, absolutely, we could end up seeing that there is an availability to sell for a higher number than what we expected. So always something to consider. I'm going to be going over a couple of quick examples of what agents have done. I've now been doing this session for, I believe, 5 years. It's always an exciting session to teach. I'm always excited to, more importantly, see what you guys are doing after the fact. So I'm going to rewind and actually show some stories or tell some stories. So we have an agent in our office. She's doing very well. She was a stay-at-home mom. Many of you know who she is, Jade. She's now on her second investment property. Really exciting. Her first investment property she bought about a year ago. Jade, if you want to comment in, we just talked about it, like 57,000, 57.5. I know it was somewhere in that range. The house is probably worth today about 110, 56.5. Thank you, Jade. House is today probably worth about 110. You can disagree with me if you want, Jade, but I bet it's worth right about that. She's getting, was it 1,000? Yeah, 1,000 a month, 12,000 a year, minus her expenses. Her expenses are pretty low, but she's probably profiting $8,000 to $9,000 a year off that property. She also bought another property. She's making an additional $450 a month. I did ask permission from Jade to share these numbers as well. So altogether, she's making, somewhere around that $12,000 to $14,000 a year of passive income. We're going to be talking about how to calculate that and what that means. Ryan, who's in the room, as of Friday. This Friday, Ryan is going to be financially independent. We're going to be talking about the wealth curve, which is something that you should definitely teach all of your kids if you don't know what that is. We're going to go over it today. You should also pay attention for yourself. But financial independence is what we're all mainly looking to do. That means our expenses are lower than what we bring in through our passive income. That should always be a goal of ours. We also had Danielle, not the Danielle Sullivan, there was a different Danielle that was with us 2 years ago. She had $0. Within 2 months after this session, she bought her first 3 investment properties, and she did not use her own money. So I'm going to share that story. Her passive income from those 3 is probably about $1,500 to $1,800 a month. So we're gonna talk about exactly how we did that, how we set her up and where she's at. So let's go ahead and we wanna look at perspective. I'm gonna share a number and I want everyone to write down and take a guess. You can go ahead and comment in. I want us to have a perspective of how well we can actually gauge either money, time, whatever that looks like. So I want you to think, what do you guys think 1,000,000 seconds ago was? How long ago was that? Days, months, years? What do you think?
Days.
Days. How many days ago?
I don't know. 14.
14. Any other guesses? Julia said 14 days ago was 1,000,000 seconds.
I don't know.
I have no
Some
guess.
people are doing some
No
quick
guess.
math.
5 days ago. A week
5
ago.
days ago.
4
7.
weeks.
4 weeks.
No.
7 days.
3 weeks.
Well, everyone's pretty accurate there. I mean, I would say roughly saying Julia was pretty close as well. 11 days is actually what it was. 11 days. Now to put into perspective what a billion is, how long ago was 1,000,000,000 seconds ago? Go ahead and write down that number, whatever that is. I think 1,000,000,000 seconds ago, and you guys want to be able to go back to these notes. So don't just write down the answer, write down, I think 1,000,000,000 seconds ago was X, otherwise you're just gonna be writing down random days and numbers. Eddie says 3 years,
110 days.
110 days. More than that,
And more zeros.
way more zeros. Eh?
110 plus 4 zeros.
Ankur is saying 11,573 days. I think somebody busted out Google. The reality is it was 1989. So the difference between 1 million and 1 billion is drastically different. I don't have the numbers on me, but if you go to 1 trillion, you're actually going 30,000 years ago. Put that in perspective. So when we talk about numbers, we need to understand how to gauge something. I'm right now, every week I go out with my nephew and I'm kind of just showing him, I'm trying to help him out, not only with school, but with general ideas, and we're building a computer together. But anyways, we're talking about a lot of different things, and the one thing I'm sharing with him is while we're looking at properties or while we're driving past something, I'm giving him an idea. He doesn't understand the difference between $10,000 and $100,000 because when you're 11 years old, it really doesn't mean much. I think that's a very valuable thing to do to understand how to gauge actually what something is. All right, moving on to the first step today. This is a quote from Jim Rohn. You're going to hear a lot from Jim Rohn, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Ray Dalio. If you don't know who those guys are, definitely write them down, start looking them up. But anyways, Jim Rohn talks about the cost of investing. And I want everyone to understand really what this means. If you think investing is risky, how many of us think investing is risky? Raise your hand, comment. The rest of us liars can all raise our hands. Like at some point, we're all going, it seems a little bit risky to me. If you think investing is risky, wait until you get the bill for not investing. There's probably a lot of us are going to be experiencing a lot of regret through today's session. I want that to burn only to the point that it's going to allow us to take action. I'm going to say that again. You're going to be experiencing some regret today. And I want that to burn to the point where it'll make you take action. Beyond that, we can forget it. But we want to start taking some action. So today's goals, we're going to be bringing clarity on investments. If we can do this correctly, we're going to explore the questions in your mind that you haven't thought of yet. So we should be getting a lot of those aha moments. B, we are going to be changing the way that we think about investing this year. Many of us probably have wanted to invest over the last 5 years or 10 years, and we have not done that. We're going to figure out and clarify why that hasn't been done so we can go ahead and do that. We also, very importantly, we need to be able to identify a great investment. That's usually the biggest thing. If we all knew how to identify a great investment, would we take the jump? We knew it was a great investment, absolutely. But if we don't have anything to gauge against, we don't understand how to actually clarify what a great investment looks like. C is going to be have a goal to hit by by using the rule of 72. We have not done this before. Jim Rohn, R-O-H-N. But the rule of 72 is very important. It's a little bit challenging for many individuals to catch on. We're gonna break it down really simple and then have a goal so that we can actually hit the $1 million mark or whatever that looks like. We're also going to be talking about some of the common mistakes in investing. Charlie Munger talks about his whole philosophy. If you don't know who Charlie Munger is, write that name down and listen to the guy. All of you know who Warren Buffett is. He is Warren Buffett's business partner and part of the reason, probably half the reason why Warren has become who he is today. So understanding what investing is not is going to be very important. But anyways, Charlie, what he talks about is his whole mindset throughout his entire life was just to stay away from bad decisions. Writing down his name. But yeah, look him up. He's got some fantastic YouTube videos. Some of them are very boring. He's very monotone, but you can get a lot from the guy. Unbelievable guy. So we're going to go into some questions. Actually, let's actually go into what not investing is. So when I usually talk with buyers that want to start investing, I notice two different types of investors. I see one investor who's going to come out and just say, Eric, I cannot wait to get my first investment property. I've been watching Property Brothers for the last 6 months. I know what countertops buyers like, and trust me, I am the most artistic person and I know how to put shiplap up. That is not investing. We're going to be talking a little bit more about what value investing is and why that's important. The second type of investor just goes, how much money am I going to make? We're going to talk about Warren Buffett's 3 questions he asks on every investment. And we're going to talk about why it's so easy to pick those out in the real estate world compared to the stock market. But we need to be able to address those 3 questions. So yeah, those are the 2 different types of buyers. What investing is not. Buying GameStop 6 months ago and hoping that it goes up. For those of us who did buy it, congratulations, that's awesome. If we took it and didn't understand the value behind it, what was actually there, we were just guessing. That's no different than going to a casino, throwing down $100 on the table and hoping for the best. We want to stay away from that mentality. Buying an Amazon stock and just hoping it goes up. By the way, that was a fantastic stock to buy for the last, probably ever since its existence. The reality is though, if we didn't understand where Amazon was going, when Amazon started, there were like 20 other companies. What was it? There was like buy.com. Does anybody remember that? There's buy.com. There were a ton of other companies that were the same thing as what Amazon was. We had to pick that out and actually figure out which one was the best. It's very easy to see it today. It was very hard when those stocks started. GM, same thing. Back in the early 1900s, there were hundreds of car manufacturers. Who would have figured out that GM and Ford were the ones to win? At least in the US, along with Chrysler. But we want to pay attention to that. So the first question that in the actual content that we're actually going to get into, I want everyone to measure, and this may change throughout today, which is pretty exciting, and I'm curious if it will change. So reach out to me, shoot me a text. I'm going to type my phone number in here. You guys can always reach out to me, but if you want to shoot me a text and let me know that it did or did not change, I'm curious what everyone sees. So how much is $10,000 a year of passive income worth to you? So if I said, every year I'm going to write you a check for $10,000, how much are you going to pay me right now for that? You can go ahead and type your answers in, and there's no good, bad, right, or wrong answer, by the way. You can type in your answer, you guys can shout it out. What are some answers we have? 50,000. Channing is saying 1,000. 10 grand, Robin. Kania, 1,000. By the way, this isn't like a good, bad, right, wrong answer. Like, Galletti is chiming in 100,000, closing costs and down payment. So you're adding that together, okay? I'm saying, forget about real estate investments. This is just me writing you a check for $10,000 every year, forever. How much are you going to pay me for that? $2,500. Remember, I'm writing you a check every year for $10,000. Anybody in the room have any ideas? Anything they would like?
All at once, we're giving this as a one, like, I'll give you 7,000 a year, you give me 10,000 a year. Or I have to pay you all at once.
Great question, I apologize. So this is a one-time fee. So you're paying me once and I'm paying you forever. Great question, Nicole. So what's that come out to be then?
You get 10,000. All right.
You're gonna make 10,000, okay. $2,000. Cindy's now, I apologize everyone if I didn't clarify.
It's
I was in my own mind there.
realistic, come on.
What's that?
I think you have to be a little realistic here. So it's gotta be somewhere like between $50,000 and $100,000.
We're seeing 50 and 100, okay.
How long is he gonna live?
I said forever.
You say you're in.
Forever. So, yes, and we're getting read between the lines here.
Oh,
I will
gosh.
be able to write that check once I die. I'll write him before I die. So we're hearing all sorts of numbers. The reason why I asked this, we need to understand how to actually come up with these numbers ahead of time, because when Warren Buffett picks out a stock, which he's really buying a company, when he does that, he will not look at what that company is selling for. He looks at the purchase price first. Why do you think he looks at what he would pay for it first. Why do you think that is? Why would you want to look at what you believe something is worth before you look at what the purchase price is?
Because that's where that's where you know your comfort level would be, you know.
Yeah, the reality
You feel
is,
like you have that information before jumping into it.
yeah, we're also influenced heavily by the number. I'll show you an exact example of this. Why was nobody buying properties in South Euclid for $20,000 10 years ago? There were very few people doing it because they all said, well, nobody else is buying it, therefore it's not worth the money, and you wouldn't want to invest there. How many of you would have gone back and bought that house for $20,000 today? Easily. Forget the purchase price, right? We're going to talk about that. I don't care what the price is today of $100,000, because that's what a $20,000 house is worth today. That's not why we should be investing in that. Alpha Data, absolutely, to determine your own return. Exactly. We need to figure out what we think it's worth before we open it up to what we think our neighbors think it's worth. Warren Buffett always talks about the stock market or the real estate market, whatever it is. The market is like a neighbor that comes over to your house. Let's say you own a farm, and he comes over to your farm every day. And let's say one day he comes over and he goes, you know what, your farm is amazing. It's worth so much money. You bought it for 100. I think it's worth 150. The next day he comes over, he had too much to drink, and he goes, all the farms are selling for way less. Your farm's only worth 50,000. The reality is, you buy a farm not because of what it's worth, but because of what?
What it produces.
What it produces, right? You don't buy an apartment building and look at the Zillow number every day, hopefully you don't. You look at and say, how much money am I making every month off of this apartment building? How many carrots is my farm producing? That's what you care about. You don't care about what your neighbor says unless he came over and he thinks it's worth 150, and you only think it's worth 100,000, you sell it to him. When he thinks all the farms are worth 50 grand, you go and buy his. That's the reality. That's what investing is. But we cannot pay attention to what the market's telling us. We have to pay attention to what it's producing. That is the definition of value investing. We don't look at the prices, we look at the value. Price is what we pay, and value is what you get. If you guys have coached with me, you know I say that all the time. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. You can expand that across all parts of your life. If it's joining into real estate full time or whatever that may be, price is what you pay, value is what you get. It's more than just usually the dollar number on the price tag there. So moving on, the next question. What would you sell all of your future earnings for today, so if you were able to take, I'm gonna make sure I'm saying this exactly correct, Nicole, that we take all of the money that we're going to produce over the next however many years we live, how much would you actually sell that for? Would it be, hopefully this is into the millions, everyone, because even if you're making $75,000 a year over, what would that take? 15 years or so, when you're going to be at $1 million. What would you sell that for today? I want everyone to write that number down because that's the value we bring to the marketplace. And if we don't know that, we should really consider what that looks like. But what would you be willing to, if I said, I'm going to buy all of your earnings today, what would you actually put that price out for that I could actually buy that for? I see some of you really thinking hard about this, and it should be something because you're going, well, geez, this year I'm making this, but in 5 years I would expect to make that.
Is it just earnings or what you already have like in savings?
Just earnings. You're not allowed to make any more money if it's you're selling real estate for a living. Your investments, you can, that's a whole different category.
But your net worth, you're not talking about that.
I'm not
You're just
talking about net worth. I'm just talking about the earned income that you would have on your W-2 or 1099 minus your expenses, things like that. Helga, 15 million. Jordan, 1 billion. Channing, 100 billion. Holy cow. Now, see, the point of an investor, if we went to any one of these individuals, we would want to see who is undervaluing what they believe their total worth is. And if we believe it's worth more, then we should be paying more for that. And we need to make sure that we're gauging correctly. That's what you do as an investor. That's what you do in real estate. That's what you do when you buy stocks or buy a company. So that's the reason I'm having you answer this. I know it's a crazy hypothetical question that many of us have not thought of, but again, that's what part of this session is for today. Last question, where do you want your passive income to be in 5 years, and where do you want your net worth to be in 5 years? Where do you want your passive income, and where do you need your net worth to be in 5 years? Channing, that's a very good answer. A number that I don't have to pay attention to. We call that financial disconcern. We just don't have to worry about, back when I would go out with a real estate broker to dinner every 2 weeks. He was a pastor from our church, and he would actually tell me, we'd go to different restaurants, and I would go through the actual menu, and I'd be like, this hamburger is like $3 less than that one. I'm buying one for $3 less. That's not really the ideal way we want to live our life. That's where we can be financially unconcerned. Robin, you like that? Financial disconcern. Write it down as one of your goals. It's probably more attainable than we all understand. Perfect. All right, the next question we have, why should we invest? We want to make the reasons of what the investing is by the what we are actually looking to invest. Why are we doing this? It's not just to make $5 million, $10 million, $100,000, $5,000 a month in passive income. What is it that that's going to do for you? So go ahead and write down. You can write down. I'll give you examples. Maybe you just had a kid and you want to pay for their college tuition. Maybe you want to give them 2 homes when they graduate high school. Maybe you want to invest in the business they own. Maybe you want to be financially disconcerned. Maybe you want to, maybe you just want to be the person that's an investor. What is it that's actually relevant to you? Again, these aren't numbers we're looking at. Why is this important to you? Why are you looking to grow? So go ahead and chime in. If you're in the room, online, whatever that is. Go ahead and tell me why it is that you want to actually invest. Financial freedom. Very good, Jade. Donate to my church, absolutely. Early retirement, financial independence.
Constant money source.
Constant money source.
I and as a college savings, but also just as a legacy that they take over.
A legacy that we take over. So important, absolutely. I mean, your kids, you want to talk about your kids remembering you for, what would you feel if your grandparents left you or your parents left you, 10,000 a month in passive income, 20,000, 30,000. Tax write-offs, absolutely, we get tax write-offs. I would be looking at what the tax write-offs do for you. It's less money you have to give to the IRS, more money that you are allowed to go on vacation. I mean, one of my goals years ago was going 4 vacations a year with my wife. We hit that every year except for last year, for some odd reason. Anyone knows why that is. But yeah, we want to actually know why. Now, that's probably the most powerful thing that you're going to be able to use. Not the most powerful thing you'll learn, but what you can use today. That is the reason why we are focusing on the next 5 years. Trust me when I tell you, financial independence is probably 3 to 5 years away if you listen close. You can probably meet the average income household if you actually focus for the next 3 to 5 years, work really hard, and do what it takes. So Brian, how long did it take you, by the way?
3 years.
There you go. 3 years ago, actually it was April 13th this year or this upcoming year will be 3?
April.
I'm sorry, August 13th.
August 13th is when we.
Got it. So yeah, 3 years coming up actually, so 2.5, just about. So that is awesome. So the next item, we're going to be going a little bit more into content here. I'm just getting everybody in the right mindset. What are the obstacles we face to invest today?
Fear.
So write those obstacles down. Now, if you're already investing, I'm going to challenge you. Maybe you have 2 or 3. Mike, how many houses are you buying right now?
There's still 2 under contract.
So Mike Arco's in there, he's buying 2 under contract. My challenge to you, Mike, would be, what would it take for you to buy 5 more homes?
Money.
Write that obstacle down. Banks, money, inexperience, fear of contractors. All great answers. There should be a bigger fear than a fear of contractors, by the way. Anyone know that answer?
Fear of inspectors.
Inspectors, we have that in the real estate world.
Point of sale.
Point of sale.
Oh, good.
I'm gonna say fear of getting the wrong tenant in. And I don't like the word fear. It's really boils down to risk. And risk is, actually this is further in here. I'm gonna skip around though. How do we limit risk?
Education.
We overeducate ourselves in that scenario, right? We limit risk by overeducating ourselves. We can get rid of inexperience and fear of contractors by overeducating ourselves on how to actually control them, how to actually work with them. But very good. The reason why I want us to be aware of what's actually allowing us to not invest, because we also have to reverse that. Look, all right, if we did have money, we had experience, and we had the contractors, I've watched agents actually get to that point, and then all of a sudden they're just afraid to jump off the diving board. So I want you to think, if you knew the contractors, you had the experience, and you were confident in yourself, and you had the money, would you actually still be able to sign a purchase agreement? First step is the hardest, absolutely. And remember, go back to what Jim Rohn said. If you think investing is risky, wait until you get the bill for not investing. We're not going to do the whole bold exercise, which we have done in the past, which is like, what does the switch cost? We are going to talk about a different one later on, but like, what are we sacrificing by not actually doing this? Like Nicole, like, what's it going to feel like when you're 70 years old and you don't have 10,000 to pass on? Like, that's 10,000 a month of passive income to pass on to your kids. Like, those are the actual things that should be motivating us to go, no, we need to jump now. We actually need to sign that purchase agreement. All right. All right, here are some side notes for everyone. Most investors fail due to a lack of being what? Most investors fail due to a lack of being blank stable. I heard financially, that is not the answer we're looking for. Close.
Stable.
It's emotionally stable is the correct answer. And don't underestimate, I have my hand raised on this one as well. My first investment property, I was like, this one's really not making sense, and we're actually going to talk about it here momentarily. I've watched so many experienced people that have actually watched, investors do very well, and they go in to make their first investment, and they're like, you know what? I gotta go get a drink of water. I'll be back and show back. We want to make sure that you're emotionally stable and understand it is normal and okay, just like a first-time home buyer, to get those feelings. We have to look back at the value. Stop paying attention to, well, my in-laws had a rental property and it did horrible. And I sold this one investment property and the tenant trashed it. All these other crazy things that does not boil into the questions that we need to actually figure out what a good investment, what a bad investment is. Look at the value of your investment, not the price. Look at the value, so that's your next side note. Look at the value of your investment, not the price. Look at the value of your investment, not the price. We invest for value, we don't invest for price. I'll give you an example of this. You can look up the house. I believe it's 21901 Miller Avenue. I bought it, you can look it up in the MLS, for $15,000, give or take $500. I bought it back in 2015. I had another agent showing tenants the property. One of the tenants came in, and I want you to think about this. If you just bought a house for $15,000, I put about 10 grand into it. Someone came up and said, I will give you $75,000 cash today for the house. You don't have to raise your hand, you don't have to comment. I want you to actually write down, would I sell a property that I have $25,000 into today? Would I sell it for $75,000? And write that answer down. Many of us would have grabbed it. And that agent who showed it said, Eric, I didn't just find you a tenant, I found you somebody to buy the house. Like, when do you want to sign the purchase agreement? I said, I'm not interested in selling it. I did not sell it. Now, was that a good decision? Absolutely. That property is rented for $1,000 a month for 5 years. I've probably made $8 grand a year times 5 years. That's $20,000. No, it's more than that. 40,000. Thank you. $40,000 plus. The house is probably worth about 110 today.
What was the address again?
21901 Miller.
What city was that?
Euclid. Now, big aha that I had, the moment we started gutting the basement, I found out the basement wall shifted. Yeah, we didn't expect that. So that was a $5,000 hit. Does my math still work out that I made a lot of money there? That's the reality. We're going to be talking about weight capacity, is what Charlie Munger calls it, of an investment. We got to make sure that we're going over the right bridge. We don't want to be going over something that's doesn't have enough margin in it. All right, something else. Look where everyone is running from and ask, is there a hidden value somewhere in there? 5 years ago, I stood up right here. It was up here, right, Julia? Or were we downstairs back then?
Downstairs.
I was downstairs, I'm sorry, I wasn't up here. But anyways, in the same building, and I said, what's the likelihood of a house in Euclid doubling in value versus a house in Mayfield Heights doubling in value? And a lot of people were like, well, probably Mayfield Heights is a good area. And I said, well, it's a $110,000 house. Will it double to $220,000? Houses in Euclid back then, on average, were selling about $50,000. Would it be likely that I could sell for $100,000? Absolutely. We have to look where that pendulum is swinging in each and every market. I'm going to be using Euclid a lot because that's where I started off. There's plenty of great markets out there, including Mayfield Heights. But we need to make sure that we're gauging our investments correctly and understanding, how that actually works out in the long run. But anyways, look where everybody's running from. Everyone's going to normally be telling you that where you're investing or whatever you're doing is going to be risky. You're going to have family members that are going to tell you it's a terrible idea. Be prepared for it and be okay with it. You have to be in your own mind and emotionally stable. Ask for that hidden value. What is everyone else running from, and are they not looking at what's happening? In Euclid back then, it was everybody was running from the price. I could care less what the prices were. I still really don't care what the prices are. I care what the value is. They're still producing about the same, a little bit more than what they were, and I think they're going to be producing a lot more here in the near future. I'll tell you why momentarily. Last but not least, this one usually hits pretty hard, and usually a couple of ahas come from this one. It's usually better to make a not so great investment than no investment at all. Robin, keep that question. We're gonna be going over that. I'm gonna actually give you an exact example of that question. It's usually better to make a not so great investment than no investment at all. For some reason, so many people are okay with buying a brand new car that depreciates like crazy. And trust me when I tell you, I love cars. I'll be the first one to admit it. I own a bunch of them. I enjoy them a lot. They are not great investments. They're terrible investments. We're willing to do that and say, well, yeah, but it's got, the car's going to run. It's going to start. It's going to be in, it's the car I want, whatever that is. And that's fine if you want to do that. Although when we look at an investment property, we go, geez, if the toilet breaks on Christmas Eve, I got to get it fixed. Why would I want, or what if the tenant leaves and they pour concrete down the drains? Which literally I have never had happen to me, and I expect it never to happen to me. I don't know of an investor that has happened to. It's just a horror story that goes out there. I heard one builder that happened to, he paid his plumber, and they ended up doing that to him. But it is rough, but maybe he deserved it if he didn't get paid for it, right? But anyways, again, it's better to make a not so good investment than no investment at all. It's not okay to lose money. I did not say that. We're going to talk about that momentarily. We're going to blow through these next items and then we're going to go into some examples. So Warren Buffett says there are 3 questions that are essential for knowing on every investment we make. I talk about this with my coaching clients all the time, and I go really close to making sure that they know exactly what these 3 questions are. That way their mind is thinking the right way whenever they're buying whatever it could be. If it's a lead source or buying an investment property, buying a vehicle, a car, a home, whatever. So the 3 questions. Number 1, how much money is there? How much money is there? Number 2, how often do we get it? Those 2 are pretty easy in most investments, by the way. It's this one that's usually pretty hard. Number 3, how certain are we? So when we talk about how much money is there on that first question, we don't want to say like, I'll ask agents like, how much money can you make in real estate? And they'll be like, infinity amount of money, right? Infinite amount of money. And that is a true statement, yet that's not what we're looking for. We're gauging an investment. Like how much money actually is there when we buy an investment property? Number 2, how often do we get it? On the rental side, it's every month. If we are doing a flip, then it's a one-time thing. We're going to be talking about the pros and cons around that. And then number 3 is how certain are we? So if I asked you to go buy a stock and answer those questions, how much money is there? I can't answer that on a stock. I'm not saying for you not to invest in stocks. I just won't invest into it until I understand it completely. And I understand here's why the market's undervaluing what the stock market is. Genuinely, when we are investing, we are betting against the general consensus in being correct, which is a very difficult thing to do. Number 2, how often do we get it? Every month. Number 3, how certain are we? So that boils down to the question of how certain are we that we can get rent? For instance, if I said there's a 4-bedroom, what's a 3-bedroom house in Mayfield Heights rent for?
In Maple?
1,200. No, I said Mayfield.
Oh.
1,200. It could go up to 16 if it's in phenomenal condition, but somewhere in that range. How certain are you that you can actually get that number out of the investment? Probably 98% certain, right? If we're looking at a stock and we're like, we're 50% certain, don't invest. What Warren Buffett talks about, there's a book called I think it's The Psychology of Hitting. And it talks about in baseball that even in a strike zone, every batter has a different area where they can actually hit and are more likely to hit. What you want to do is only swing in that hitting zone. Who cares if you get a strike or not? Because really, what that looks like is any of us who didn't buy Bitcoin 5 years ago, that's okay to take that strike. Like we didn't know what it was. I'm okay with not knowing what it is. Let's stay in our strike zone or stay in our hitting zone. We know that a rental property is going to produce what it's going to produce. Only hit those because losing money is not something that's acceptable. So we want to stay within that hitting zone. All right, I'm going to skip through some of this other information so we can make sure that we are ending on time. another great question is, what don't we need? Simple examples. We don't need influence from others who don't know the real estate market. By the way, a lot of the people that are influencing you probably know a lot less about the real estate market than you do. We don't need tons and tons of money. We don't need an LLC. That is something I would recommend. It's not something we need to get started. If there's any other limiting beliefs, go ahead and put them in there. All right, this is where we should get into a little bit more fun. And what we're going to do is start talking about the rule of 72 and how to calculate it. So we're going to first off figure out what our net worth is. We need to know what our net worth is. So on the left side of your piece of paper, you don't have to start a new one if you want, you can, but on the left side, you need a couple lines here to run, maybe 10. On the left side, you can draw a line down the center. On the left side, you're going to have everything that you own and what it's worth. So you're going to write down car, $20,000, house, $300,000, whatever that looks like. On the right side, you're going to have your debts on that exact house, on that exact car. Do you have a credit card? Do you have a student loan? You're looking not for the monthly payments, we're looking for the total amount of what it's worth and the total amount that we owe. Now, some of you are probably already ahead of this. I want you to have a separate line for on either side, so you can draw a line underneath that and then put your investments underneath that. So if you have a retirement account, investment properties, and how much you owe on each one of those, so we can calculate how much equity more or less that we have. What we need is a total net worth, and then we need an investment net worth. I'll tell you why momentarily. So go ahead and write that down. Your total net worth versus your investment net worth. All right, I'm going to keep moving forward. If you guys need me to slow down, please comment, type in whatever you need here. So write down the answer, your net worth. Where has that mainly come from? Has it come from investments or from income? Inheritance. Where has your net worth come from? Thanks for sharing, Rob. Now, what we're going to do is extremely powerful if you pay close attention. Try and really zone in here and make sure that you're understanding what I am saying. So the rule of 72 is very important. There's Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett talk about this all the time, that the rule of 72 is one of the reasons they became very wealthy. There are three things that actually they said. Number one is living in America. Number two is living a long life. And number three is compound interest. The rule of 72 allows us to figure out how quickly our income or our net worth will double. We're going to be talking about what your average rate of return is. By the way, a little side note that I had on here, if you have more than 6 to 12 months of cash in your account, that means you have a lot more money that you should be able to spend investing. I'm not saying that you should run out there and just find an investment for no reason, but we do need to start spending more. We're going to talk about the difference between spending and paying. Those are two different things people don't pay attention to quite often. So the rule of 72 tells us we take 72 and divide it by the interest rate. Bless you. We are going to get how quickly, how many years it takes to double our investment or double our net worth. So if we take 72 divided by, what is a good rate of return, by the way?
20%, 12%.
I heard all sorts of numbers. Warren Buffett over his entire lifetime has averaged 20%. that is easily achievable in the real estate market today. I know it sounds weird that I'm saying what Warren's averages we're all able to hit. It's much different when you start trying to do 20% on $1 billion. We talked about the difference in what $1 million versus $1 billion is. You can do it with $1 insanely easy. But once you get up to that $1 billion mark, it's a different story. It's a different game up there. But it's easily achievable right now. I actually pulled some houses off the MLS that I'll show you guys today on how to do it. I don't want multiple offers on that house later today. So anyways, the rule of 72 is where we not want our net worth. So take your net worth of your investment column and then figure out we already asked, where do you want it to be 5 years from now? Now, the rule of 72 may get you there or it may not, meaning your investment accounts automatically, if you continue to follow compounding interest, which by the way, all compounding interest is when you take any of your proceeds from your investment property, including equity. You didn't hear that, that is insanely important. Not only what your rate of return is, so not the cash flow, but it's also the equity. So if the market appreciated 10%, which has happened, and actually even more, I think Mayfield Heights like appreciated over 20% in the last year. It's insane. We have to include that 20% as well. We have to take that amount of money and then reinvest it back into real estate. So anyways, all you have to do is figure out what your rate of return is on your investments. If you want to make it 20%, if you don't have something, you can start there. That means every 3.6 years, we take 72 divided by 20 is 3.6. Every 3.6 years, you will double. So if you take your net worth, double it, that'll be 3.6 years from now. You double it again, it's actually going to be more than 5 years out, but you get the point. That'll tell you where you're going to be in 7.2 years, if my math is correct. So double it twice. So hit the multiplication number twice. That doesn't mean like just hit 200% or something like that. Hit it twice and then hit it times 2, then times 2 again. Now, if your net worth number is on target for your goal, congratulations. All you need to do is reinvest every year. If it's not, what do we need to do? Any ideas in the room or online? What's that?
Adjust?
We do have to adjust. How? How are we going to adjust?
Add more income or raise something to spend.
Pretty simple. We just have to spend more money, right? So our investments are not self-sustained, if you will. You have to actually take money out of your income and put more money in it. Now, eventually, you don't have to do that anymore. Remember, the difference, there's an old saying, the rich become rich because they they invest first and spend what's last. People who are not wealthy spend first and invest whatever is left over. What is usually left over for most people? Not much or negative, right? If you keep going further and further into debt, now the time to get out of that and figure that out. So if you're going negative every year, we need to figure that out and get into a positive number. All right. We're actually going to break down the numbers here momentarily. If that didn't make sense for you, we're going to put it up on the board. But a couple other quick rules. Number one rule of investing from Warren Buffett: don't lose money. Rule number 2 of investing is refer back to rule number 1. Now, I know that's a funny comment. I want to give you an example of how devastating that can be. Right now, a lot of people are investing in Bitcoin, and it may go up, it may go down. I don't know what's going to happen with it. It's really a currency, which is a scary thing to me. It's a currency, and it's not being used as a currency. It's being used as an investment, right? A currency is just a piece of paper you're trading back and forth. You can lose a lot on time, yeah. But a currency has to be stable for us to trust to work, to use it. Why are people not spending their Bitcoin on buying houses? Because they think that Bitcoin is going to be worth more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they think it's going to be worth more money, then they wouldn't sell it for something that's going to be stable. So it's not really a currency right now, and could it transition? Absolutely, I don't know. I'm not going to advise on that. What I can say is it possible that it could go back down to $5,000? Right now, it's like, does anybody know 50,000, something like that? Many of us don't know. That's a good sign. I'm in the right room. But I know last I looked, it's about $50,000 per Bitcoin. About 5 years ago, it was like 2,000. It could go back down to 2,000. It could just completely blow up. The government could change their laws around it. Who knows what could happen? Or tax implications, I should say, around it. But we have to be careful of what that looks like. So let's say we lose 95%. So let's say you invest $10,000. You lose 95% of the value. Now we said 20% is a great rate of return. So if we're taking, what did I say, 10,000? What is 5% of 10,000? Who can do that math? It's 500. What is the next year? What do we have to make just to break back to level? What's the percent rate of return? Now, if we multiply 95 times 5, what's that come out to be? If we take $10,000, we multiply that times 0.05, we get $500. So what's it take? What's the rate of return we need to get back up to 10,000? What's that? It's 20 times. So that's actually 2,000% you have to make the next year. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but I've never seen a 2,000% rate of return. I've seen, including myself, I've made 100% rate of returns, even a little bit higher than that, back when the market was crazy cheap, but I have not seen anyone do that type of number. So once we do that once or twice, and we take that crazy risk without we're uneducated about is really what it is, an uneducated investment, same thing as gambling. That's where we can lose. So we cannot do that. Are we on time? We have another hour here. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and go into these numbers here. So I usually used to give you guys the numbers of like the car that I bought, which was a big aha versus my first investment property. And that is a useful piece of information, although I think this one's going to hit home a little bit better for everyone. So if you have a computer up, you can look up this house, 25670 East Forest View. This is the house everyone's going to offer on as soon as this session is over. 25670.
Forest View?
For East, it actually said, no, you know what, I was typing in a different property. It is just Forest View.
Is that in Bay Village?
That is in Euclid.
Okay. Because I sold the house on Forest View.
So the purchase price right now is $80,250. I have not been in this house and I'm not recommending you buy this house. There are plenty of these deals out there. There's also a property, you can look it up. It's 1 Trenton Building 9. I don't remember how they had it listed. That was the first property I ever bought. I think I bought it for $14,100. For today's session, we're just going to say it's $14,000 for the sake of conversation. So I'm going to compare how many of you right now would say that property, it's a condo in Euclid, 2-bedroom condo, HOA fee is $200 a month. How many of you would buy that for $14,000 today? Pretty much everyone in the room raised their hands. Now, not only was that condo available back in 2000, let's see, I bought that in 2008, there were about 40 others in the next year. What I want to make sure is that as we are speaking today, that you're saying, wait, can I make that same rate of return? How can I, and where can I be 5 years, 10 years down the road? So $14,000, I had to put only about $1,000 into it. So let's just go ahead and write this down. You guys see if I write here yet. So this is 1 Trenton. We have 14,000. And by the way, practically everyone I talked to, and I told them I was buying this condo, said I was insane, I was crazy, I should have never bought it. We just had everyone in the room raise their hand, and I'm assuming many of you at home did it as well. But we have $14,000 as a purchase price. We have $1,000 in repairs. The next thing we have is rent. So I was getting $700 a month in rent. I could write 7,000, which would be great. 700 in rent. The next number I have written for us is taxes. Here's something that was a huge help. What do you guys think I was paying in property taxes?
$2,000 a year.
That would seem about correct. Ray said 2,000 a year, and it was actually it was about $29.16 a month. If you guys want to know how to reduce property taxes, I'll plug the session. Julia, do you know when that is?
I don't know.
It's like towards the end of this month. Keep an eye out for it. You're going to get a text, an email
I can find out.
on how to reduce property taxes, and those are due by March 31st. But we'll go over that session, because what you do is you file what's called a DTE Form 1. You complain about the property valuation. They bring it from what they thought it was worth to what your purchase price is. That's only if it's an arm's length transaction, and that's not including if it was a VA property, a HUD property, or sheriff sale. But short sales are included, and bank loans are as well. So anyways, I was able to reduce the taxes. We're not always able to do that to that level anymore, but something we can look at. Now, insurance, what did I say, $29.16 I have. You guys can look up and actually confirm that number. I'm ballparking here, but I know it's plus or minus $10. Taxes, we have insurance that we also have to pay every month, right? How much is insurance on a condo?
Not a lot.
It's like $20 a month.
Yeah.
Now, we're actually going to write a bigger number of $220 because we also had what in the condo?
HOA.
That's right. So I'm going to put, which by the way, part of your HOA fee goes towards the insurance of the dwelling. Not to mention it covers the outside repairs and all of that. So I put $220 for that. It was $200 for the insurance, and then, I'm sorry, $20 for the insurance, $200 for the HOA. So.
That property tax class is actually this coming Tuesday during our sales
That's
meeting.
right, we already
I'm like, I don't know. It's so Tuesday, the 23rd at 9:30.
Tuesday, the 23rd at 9:30. We are doing it during the Tuesday meeting. Thank you, Julia. And let's see. We have $30 for a maintenance. Actually, before we go into that, we have principal and interest. Now, for this sake of conversation, and actually what happened, I paid cash for it. So we don't have this on the next property. We are going to see a principal and interest number. Last but not least, we are going to have our maintenance fee. On a condo, I'm putting $30 a month. Why am I putting $30 a month? Because I don't have to worry about a roof. I don't have to worry about the windows. The windows actually were mine, but they were final replacement windows, so we were all set there. It's a brick exterior. I don't have to worry about driveways or any of that. All I have to worry about is the furnace, hot water tank, carpet, and paint, pretty much. So that boils down to, if you're doing the math ahead of time, that's going to be $420.84 per month. Now, there's one number I did not include in here. What is that number, or what is that category I didn't include?
Vacancy.
Vacancy and utilities are paid by the tenant.
You don't pay water either? No water?
Nope, no water. I did not include vacancy or property management. We should be putting that in there. I just excluded it for keeping the numbers a little bit more simple. The maintenance, or I'm sorry, the property management, we should not. Last line item says maintenance. property management, that means who's answering the phone calls, who's, you know, finding the properties. We are doing that ourselves. I recommend doing that. You should be able to do that. I've got investors doing about 50 to, my top investor is doing about 80 by himself right now. So there's no reason we can't do that by ourselves. It takes a very small amount of time when you have the right systems set up. That's a whole nother session though. But we're gonna compare apples to apples here and say this is $420 a month. We're gonna multiply that times 12. Who can do that math? Well, actually I already have done this time. We have $5,050.08. So $5,050.08. So I asked you earlier, how much money would you pay for $10,000? We can look back at this. If we multiply this number by 2, that's your $10,000 of passive income. If your answer was more than 30,000, you could have done that multiple times. Back in 2008, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, all the way up through like 2015, there were plenty of, even like 2016, there were a handful of deals. So those numbers were achievable, and that's not even the best. I can show you other numbers that were way better than that, but that was definitely duplicatable. And we still can do that today, and I'll show you how. It's going to be with a different method though. And that's our Forest View house. By the way, actually, before we even finish that, our rate of return on that, cash on cash, meaning I paid, how much money did I pay for this property out of pocket?
15,000.
15,000 for the sake of conversation. Of course, I had some closing costs and I had to pay a rental application fee and things like that, but apples to apples, we're going to say it was 15,000. Therefore, our rate of return was actually 33%. I'm outpacing Buffett with that. All right, 25670 Forest View. How long has that been on the market?
19 days.
Hasn't been 19 days.
What it says on.
So it's available. I have not seen the property. It could be a total disaster. I don't know, but I'll show you some numbers. I do think it potentially could be looked at from anyone. Now, here are a couple of numbers. Let's say the house needs 5,000 repairs. Right now, let's say you do not negotiate at all and you buy it for 82.5. Which, by the way, that's lucky to not negotiate at all today. Usually we're negotiating on the positive side. Having to pay 85, 90, 95. We have $5,000 in repairs, we said. Yeah, I have to write this a little bit bigger. You guys probably are having trouble reading these numbers. Thank you. Where'd you get that from?
Just right.
There we go. What's that?
Jermaine Brooks. It's listed by Jermaine Brooks.
It's Jermaine's listing. 25% referral fee. We've got 5,000 repairs. Next number we need is rent. What do you think a 3-bedroom house in great condition rents for in Euclid right now?
It's currently getting 882.
That house, I can tell you, rent is out of control right now. Why? Everyone seems to be getting more money today. Watch in the future, minimum wage is going to be going up. These numbers are going to be rising. When availability of money is higher, people tend to spend more. Rent will rise. I've been watching these numbers go way up.
So
Land
right now,
market
it's,
working better.
right now it's listed at 882. It says it's gonna go up in April.
Yeah.
I think that they're gonna be able.
So Nicole's question, if you guys can't hear, is it's at 882 right now in the MLS. Could it go up, and what's it going to go up in April? You'll have to all text Jermaine. Jermaine's now not going to like me. I don't know what it's going to go up to in April. That's a question for him. Reality is, a 3-bedroom house in good condition today in Euclid should have no trouble in getting 1,100 a month.
So when you're doing your numbers, are you doing it based on current lease or the value that you are assessing it?
Fantastic question. I'm doing it off what I believe it's worth.
Okay.
Remember, we don't want to pay attention to what the market's telling us. We have to know what we believe what can happen. The best way to limit risk is, again, overeducate. Talk to agents, talk to buyers, talk to owners in that neighborhood and ask them, what are they doing? Talk to tenants. When you pay $1,100 for a fantastic house, I can almost guarantee you with 98% certainty that that can be achieved. We're watching numbers get out of control right now with rent. Taxes. I calculated the taxes on that house to come out to 200.
3104, it says.
What's that?
It says 3104 here.
Yeah, 258 per month. Anybody want to check my math on that?
You got it.
258.12. What about the rent-o-meter? Is that like Zillow? Does anybody know what the rent-o-meter is? Alpha Data chimed in on that.
Gives you averages of rent in the area.
Yeah. I'm going to say if that's a computer-generated number, that's similar to saying, what about Zillow? Like, Zillow can be off drastically and it can be dead on. I am more confident in my own numbers than I am Zillow. Therefore, I'm also more confident in what I'm getting paid in rent in the area than I am the rent-o-meter. It's a good gauge though, Alpha Data. I'm glad you brought that up. Like, if you're going into an area you don't know, it's at least worth looking into and saying, all right, does the math even generally look right? What do we have after taxes? We've got insurance. I'm calculating about $1,000 a year, which is how much per month? $83.33, right? You need to make $100,000 a year. You make $8,333 a month.
I have an insurance guy for you that year.
Yes, we can get that definitely down. Nicole was joking and saying that seems very high. I agree. A lot of my policies, by the way, I'm paying usually on the condos like $20, $25 a month. On the high side for the single families, $60 to $80 a month. Down payment. So here's where we have something different. Our down payment, we are going to have $16,500. Why did I choose 16,500?
20%.
That's correct, 20% down. Principal and interest on that loan, I think I did like a 3.8% rate, which is definitely achievable. You should be able to get a lower interest rate, but let's say you do this a month from now and rates go up. Principal and interest came out to about $307 a month. Maintenance. Now, how much is maintenance going to be on a property like this per month?
12%.
We usually say about 10. So $110 a month, but yeah, somewhere in that range. Now that can change, and we asked about like the rent-o-meter and Zillow. Ryan, your property you bought 3 years ago. Now Ryan redid everything. It was in perfect condition. So if you buy a house in perfect condition or redo it all, Ryan, how much money have you paid in the last 3 years total in maintenance there?
$200.
It's when you put on like
Very minimal.
that was like a storm door and a gutter, right?
Right. That wasn't that she requested.
Right, it was more, the gutter was definitely a maintenance item. The gutter ended up hanging down a little bit after a storm, and then the storm door, she wanted one added on, so I wouldn't even call that maintenance, that was property improvement. But either way, it was something to make the tenant happy. So that number could be way, way less. I have 110 here, by the way.
Month?
Yes. Yeah, now that doesn't mean that we are spending $110 a month, but that does mean maybe in 4 years you put a roof on. That might be $5,000 or something. So we do have to pay attention to that. But usually the bigger things that most tenants have to we get calls about, furnaces and hot water tanks. Get those replaced, make sure they're serviced, make sure they're in great condition. Your door handle is not going to be a midnight call of, the inside door handle doesn't close right. They can wait a day or two and you can get somebody out there. You cannot wait on a -10-degree day for a furnace to be repaired. You need to get that going. So, what's that come out to be? $341 per month. We're gonna multiply that times 12. What's that come out to be? Again, I have it for you guys, $4,092. I wanted to save us some time today, instead of going through the different calculations.
Hey, Eric, I got a quick question. So
Yeah.
when you said the maintenance was 10%, so is it 10% of the monthly rent or?
10% of the gross rent.
Okay.
And remember, these are rough numbers. These are usually like worst case scenarios we're giving. There are plenty of times that you might go through the whole year and be like, yep, I didn't have many of the challenges that I thought I would get. But let's say we do that math. Now we want to look at cash on cash return. How much money out of pocket did it cost me to get into this?
And 5,000 in repairs.
Right, do not forget, it's not just your down payment, it's also the repair costs. So we have 21.5. So we do $4,092 divided by 21.5, and that comes out to be a cash on cash return of 19%. How many of us want a 19% return on your money?
Wait, what did you divide it by?
4,000 divided by 21.5. Now, if you raise your hand, call Jermaine Burge and write an offer. It's literally that simple. Now, I would not recommend, I pulled up that house in 5 seconds. I would go look at 5 or 6 of them. Do not overcomplicate it. Don't worry about having the best deal ever. You don't need that. It's better to be generally right than precisely wrong. Precisely wrong is where we analyze and overanalyze and think, will this be a good investment or could there be a problem? We need to make sure that we end up coming up with that exact, we have to make sure that we're profiting at the end of every year. So any questions on how that works? Very good. Moving forward, what we normally do is I do recommend highly finding a property with equity. A couple of insights that you may not be seeing here of the difference between these investments. If you can get a property with equity, that is extremely helpful in your first couple. What I mean by that, find the house that's maybe 45,000 that needs 40 grand in work. Even though you're going to be at the same price here, the property's probably going to be worth 110, 120. And what you can then do is pull an equity line to buy your next one, which is really, really nice to do. So that's available. That was not the case here. You could not pull any loan whatsoever on this property. So there's a value add on this side of the table. Something else, we talk about appreciation. Remember, when we are talking the rule of 72, we're not just making the 19%. I'm sorry, I'm pointing at my computer numbers. We're not making the 19% or the 33%. We're making that plus the appreciation for the year. Now we want to be real with our appreciation numbers. Is it real to believe that we are going to get, and Robin, I think I just answered your question. No, it's very tough to get an equity line on a condo at this price. You can get one, just not at this value at that time. By the way, that condo is probably worth about 70 grand today. You can look up what's selling in Georgetown, maybe 60 for a 2-bedroom. But back to appreciation. When you are looking at a property at this price range, you're spending $15,000 at your appreciation. If it appreciates 5% per year, then you're appreciating on the $15,000. Over here, I'm putting $16,000 in. What is my appreciation of 3 or 4 or 5% going off of? It's going off of 82.
Yeah.
Another reason why people don't understand on stocks, even if they're getting 5% a year, they're getting 5% on their cash, not 5% on the purchase price. There's a big difference there. So keep that in mind. The question that we don't know right now. In the next year, do we believe prices will go up or go down? I believe in the very short term, they're probably going to go up. After a year, I really don't know. And even 6 months from now, could it go down? Like last year, if you would have asked me, Eric, do you think prices are going to go up or go down? How many of us would have said they would go down? We all, and not only that, we were probably pretty darn certain, like 75% certain. We were completely, not only were we wrong in the wrong direction. Like we were way off on that. We don't know what the market's going to do, and it's important not to try and predict and have a basis of investing off of predicting. What we do want to do though is look at what we could end up doing in 5 years. Do I think this property is going to go up in 5 years? Yeah, I think it's reasonably certain to believe that this property in the next 5 years will go up. 10 years, absolutely. 20 years, I'm almost 100% confident that it would. So that's what we need to be understanding. I don't need to predict what's happening with the market today, tomorrow. I'm not worried about buying and selling really quick or anything like that. All right. Very good. All right, so I want to talk about the value of investing over time and what appreciation actually means. So what was the average purchase price of a house back in 1980? Who has some guesses? Am I losing you guys? 70,000, I heard. What else? 50? Pretty close. The average was actually $43,000, 45, Latoya. Wow. Either you had a very accurate estimate or you were on Google, one of the two. But it was $43,000. Great job, Latoya. And what was the average price range in 2019? Getting good at this. 180, I heard. Across the US, it was actually 226. Now, that average actually comes out to be about I want to say it was like 4.3% is what the actual number was. Normally we see about 3 to 5% appreciation. Now, we talked about what a good rate of return is. And if we look back at 1980, if I wanted to get a loan, what was my rate, what was my interest rate on a loan back in 1978, 1980?
Around 15, 16%. Vijay, you're saying, yeah, 19, it was about just under 20, which is incredible. Now, why was that? Why were interest rates so high? There was something else that was out of control back then, which we are experiencing today. Inflation was out of control. Yes, all of a sudden everyone's savings and loans, I think, I wasn't around during those times or I wasn't in the business, but I believe that was a little bit closer to the 90s, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, the 18% rate, the inflation was out of control, so the Fed just kept raising interest rates to stop people from spending, because remember, what we pay and what we spend are two different things. We are paying here $16,000, well, I'm sorry, $20,500. We are spending $82,500. When spending gets out of control, the government raises rates to get spending back into control. And they kept going from 10 to 12 to 14, and people just kept spending and spending and spending, which devalues the dollar. So how many of you think a 20% rate of return is a good number? We all said that was good. Was that good back in 1980? What was that doing for you in 1980?
Breaking even.
You were literally, it was better than leaving money in the bank. By the way, leaving money in the bank is literally letting your money burn. Like it is just rotting away in the bank if you're doing that. Back in 1980, that was more true than ever, and that could be true today. We experienced cars going up in prices. You could actually buy a car, hold on to it, sell it, and actually make money. That is not ever anything that I've ever experienced, and I don't think that ever has been the case. We are seeing inflation. It's not just supply and demand. In the real estate business, do we have a supply and demand issue? We do. Along with a low interest rate and inflation, that's why we are seeing
this perfect storm of an insane amount of buyers, no sellers, and insane prices. I mean, we are watching, these are only stories we heard happening in like California and Florida and Vegas and stuff. The Cleveland market's doing it now. It's incredible. What goes up must come down. I'm not going to say that it's going to collapse tomorrow or a year from now or 5 years from now, but it cannot sustain this unless inflation is just pumping it up. Which, if inflation is, get your money out of the bank as quickly as you possibly can. Buy something, buy gold. Do something with your money, then let it sit in the bank because it's literally losing its cash every single day when that happens. The point is, though, remember, we are saying that these prices are inflating by 3 to 5%. They are. Understand, though, that we are devaluing the dollar by about the same amount. So the value of real estate doesn't really change over time. It's kind of a thing where we say, oh, invest in, the real estate market always goes up. Generally true, but also does the value of the dollar always goes down, so it kind of matches itself. The value, what we use it for, pretty much stays the same. So yeah, just want to make sure everybody understands. A good rate of return, by the way, by definition, should be about 10% on top of what current inflation rates are at. In the last year, they're claiming, I think it was like 5%. In my opinion, inflation was actually higher than that. It definitely feels like as labor went up, lumber materials are out of control, car prices are out of control, home prices are out of control. To me, it feels much different than what the government's actually, whatever their calculation is showing. And we do want to be aware of actually what money is going in and going out. Anyways, I want to make sure everybody understands a couple of different simple definitions. So if you don't know these, make sure you write them down. First off, very simply, what is profit? It's the monetary surplus left over, left to a producer. Interest, kind of a funny one. It's actually, interest is the cost of money. It's a weird way to look at it. Investment, here's a big one that very rarely people actually understand. There's 4 different quadrants in, according to Robert Kiyosaki. There is being an employee, being self-employed, and on the right side of it, it talks about being a business owner or an investor. So an investment is, the definition is the investing of money or capital in order to gain a profit in returns, interest, or income, or appreciation of value. So the interest, the investing of money or capital in order to gain a profit as returns, interest, income, or appreciation of value. That does not say, I buy a house, I spend all the time, effort, money, take all sorts of work, pay money out of pocket to all of a sudden more or less just have income at the end of the day. We could have also worked in somebody else's house for that same amount of income. That is what we call running a business. And by the way, running a business in the flipping game is very profitable. I'm not discouraging from it. Just understand you're a business owner, not an investor. I would actually claim you're part investor if you're using your own cash, part business owner. So be aware of that. I see a lot of mistakes happen, especially with time. Mike Arco had a really good example of a great flip that he did that he was hands off on. He was more of an investor where he just put money out. He did go over there quite too often, a couple of times, but I've watched investors take a year, 2 years, 3 years to try and flip a property, and by that time the market, back in 2005, I watched them crash, and there was all sorts of challenges. So be aware of that. Flipping is a good business. You can make a lot of money doing it. It is not investing. Risk, the chance of a hazard of loss. Again, to limit risk, we just have to have focused education. We already talked about appreciation, that an asset, a useful value, a useful or valuable thing. And then leverage is your debt to equity ratio. Is really what we want to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and pause, and then we're going to do some Q&A after this. But what are some ahas that you've had so far today? You can go ahead and either chime in online through the chat, I'll read them out loud, or anybody in the room, you can go ahead and chime in what you got. ahas thus far.
When you write it down, it seems a lot more doable than when it's all up here.
Tell me more. She said when we write it down, it's more doable.
I mean, when you break down and you see the numbers and you do the math,
Over here.
yeah.
Yeah, that was my big first aha. I came into this business with the intention of flipping. I did a lot of cars back in high school, made a lot of money, and the first time I sat down and I handed keys over to a tenant of a property I never wanted to live in, it was not useful to me, and they handed me $1,400 in cash that I could actually hold and grab, and I thought, wow, another $700 is going to come to me in 30 days. That was pretty impactful. So Cindy said, depending on where you, sorry, I just jumped there. Depending on where you are in your lifespan, investing or flipping has a time element to it. Absolutely. Alpha, the breakdown of the numbers and the fact that they're more doable than we thought. I promised you all of this. If you get anything from today, go out and start jumping in. A lot of investors say the first thing we should do is go to a bank and get pre-approved, or we're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like to bring on a partner and what that looks like. But absolutely, it's definitely achievable. Everyone's financially, should be able to be financially independent in 3 to 5 years with hard work and some determination. Any other ahas so far?
Mine was overcome or limit your risk with education.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, limiting your risk with education is super impactful. That comes with, whenever I go into a different endeavor, I actually will clear my desk completely. I'll write down, I'll clear my mind and actually write down what I'm about to do. It's been very impactful for me. Sue, it looked like you were about to say something.
Oh, no, but I would say, the whole better to make a not so great investment than not at all. So you're losing out if you're just not doing anything.
Yeah, and I really believe that now is the same time. It's not as easy as it was, but literally back in 2008 through 15, that was a big window. You could have literally closed, and I would actually say 2005 to 2015. You could have literally closed your eyes and pointed to a house in many cities, and you would be way ahead of the game today if you would have just picked one and bought it. There were very, very few losers. One of the questions I normally get is, Eric, how many times have you ended up losing in the real estate game? Like, have you made a bad investment? And the answer is absolutely not once. Literally not once have I lost on an investment. Not only that, the bigger loss that I have, Ryan probably wants to shoot me because every day I'm talking about how I should have bought more homes back then. Like, that was my biggest mistake. I didn't realize. I remember thinking when this investor was buying these condos for 10 grand, I was 20 years old or something. And I was like, if I had 100 grand, he just spent $100,000, which was insane amounts of money to me when I was 20 years old. And I thought, would I spend 100,000? And I said, no. I said that would be a terrible thing to do, but I was not paying attention. I never once thought that would make me an additional like 6 grand a month in income, 7 grand, something like that. Years later, I was willing to pay $30,000. I actually offered that investor for all of his properties, $30,000 a piece in that complex. And again, they're worth, it's that same complex I'm showing you. They're worth, again, 60, 70, 80,000 today. So depending, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom.
Do you feel like kind of the same thing that we tell some of our clients now, because the interest rates are low, that it's still an affordable and good time to invest?
I'm glad you brought that up. I hope everyone heard what Nicole said. Am I advising my clients the same way? Because it's like, well, buy a property and pay a lot for it because interest rates are so low. The reality is, absolutely, this method did not work 10 years ago because interest rates were 6%. At 6%, that doesn't make sense. You're making $150 a month. All you're doing is trying to get the appreciation up, which would have worked over time, but that's gambling. That's speculating that the market's going to go up. I don't know what's going to happen. I want to make sure that this number works. And as long as also that this number is bigger than all these combined. Like, I need to make sure that I'm very confident that that capacity of that bridge can hold that weight, which is what I was talking about before. But absolutely, this only works with a low interest rate right now. So grab it. I heard this from a massive investor recently that owns, I don't know, like 600 doors. He said, grab as much money as you can today and lock it in, because with inflation, they're literally giving it to us for free. If inflation's at 3% and we're borrowing at 3% or 3.5%, it's practically free money. Not to mention if we're making money on it every month, if we're making 19% and paying 3%, it only makes sense, especially when we're making 19% on our cash. We have to take that and do it as many times as we can. That capacity of that bridge that I was talking about, one of the fundamental rules of investing is we need to make sure that when we are investing, that we're not taking a truck that's 10,000 pounds and driving it over a bridge that says its only capacity is 11,000. We need to drive down the street until we find something that's got a 40,000 pound capacity and drive our 10,000 pound truck over it. The reason being is if anything's out of whack, we're still safe. Same thing with both of these. Like worst case scenario over here, I knew what these numbers were. I could care less if this guy drove into the ground and was worth $5,000. Many of us still pay that number. We would, because our numbers were usually pretty higher than that from that first question. So I was okay, and I did not predict that the market was going to go up this high this fast. I did know, though, I could care less because of this number. Right? That's all I cared about. If I was buying a gas well and it ran out in 10 years, but it already doubled my money in 10 years, that I was fine with that. Channing, another fantastic question. So he wrote in here, I'm struggling to decide to sell or hold within 25 years of equity. I'm sorry, with 25 equity. I'm assuming that's 25,000. So I'm going to erase this. So back to that, why was it that house at 21901 Miller that I referred to before, why was it that I didn't sell that house? Somebody offered me 75 after I bought it for 15.
Because you could make income on it.
I knew that there was more potential in it. So a real big question, we never want to value an investment over a year like we just did. I shouldn't say never, but that's a good starting point. What we need to do is multiply it out by 5 or 10 years, which is what we know or what we're confident that we can calculate. So what we need to do, I'll just use that example. Let's say the value was 75,000. Use the wrong pen again. That is the right one. So if we take that 75, now every year that property is making me $8,000 a month. I'm sorry, $8,000 a year. I'm definitely keeping it at $8,000. So here's how we figure out how much a property is worth to us. If I know it's making $8,000 a year, we multiply that times, let's say I'm going to keep this for 20 years. So somebody do 20 times 8 for me. It's 160,000. $75,000. Rule of 72 is what we have to calculate because it appreciates by how much per year? Let's say 4% on average. Everybody good with that? So 72 divided by 4 is 18 years. So it's going to double in value, right? It's going to take 18 years to double in value. That means in 18 years, do you think that house could potentially be worth $150,000? To be honest, it's already up to 110. I think it's probably going to be worth a lot more than that 18 years from now, but the rule of 72 proves us correct, and it only stays at 4%. That's the reality of what the market is. So in the next 20 years, I can tell you that house is going to produce me $310,000. Again, this is why we need to understand the comparison approach. Now, if somebody wrote me for a check for $310,000 for that property, am I taking it? Why?
You could provide more of those properties.
Yeah, that's the other part that we have to pay attention to. Can we replace it for a lot less? Channing's now going to, I get it now. That's what I can tell you, that property, I know for I shouldn't say know for a fact, but I'm extremely certain, like 80%, 85, 90% certain. I'm pretty close here. Plus or minus 10%, I'm like 98% certain. So I know what it's worth. Now, money now is worth a lot more money than money later. And by the way, this is not including inflation numbers, right? Because I'm not in 20 years gonna be charging or getting $8,000, I'm probably gonna be getting twice that. Right, so I'm not taking into effect inflation yet. Inflation is also going to be there where 310 today is gonna be worth 600 then, so I don't really care about gauging that right now. Would I take a check for 310? Absolutely, and then I just go down. Would I take a check for 280? The answer is yes, because I can replace, I can buy 2 of these. Right now, in the same condition or better than that. 230, 210, you get the point. At some point, I'm saying, you know, and to be honest, chances are this house, if it's worth 110, somebody's willing to give me 150, I can replace it for 110 and have $40,000 of equity on top of it. That's only because it's replaceable right now. If that property is not replaceable and they are becoming harder and harder and harder to replace, that's the way my mind is working. So that's the game we got to kind of play, is understand the total value, then back our mind off it and keep going up and down with those numbers until it makes sense. We have to do what makes sense in our own mind. Great question. Any other ahas before I share one last thing that we have to talk about today? Very good. So we're going to go into how to set goals for a rule of 72 to make sure we are hitting our numbers on time. All right. So we start off the rule of 72 with either one, what we are willing to invest this year, or we have to start off with what our current net worth is in only our investment category. So why don't we go ahead and start off with, I know some of us have, we're just starting off, we're at 0. I know some of us are at 700,000 in our investment category, higher. But why don't we go ahead and start off with 100,000 to make it easy. These markers. There we go. All right, so we're starting off with 100,000.
Should write in green anyway, that's money.
I like that. So we got 100,000.
It's St. Patrick's Day.
Very true. So this is at year 0, right? Now, what do we believe in today? Actually, more importantly, what do you believe you can do in the real estate market with investing? What is your rate of return that you can do? What is the rate of return? Go ahead and shout it out, what you believe you can do. I just showed you a couple different numbers. Can you make 10%, 20%? 20% cash on cash. Okay. I'm going to say a little bit more than that. I think we all can strive for about 25%. Here's why. I showed you the example of 19%. We're also taking 5% appreciation, right, off 82.5. What's 5% of 82.5? So it's $4,100. What does cash on cash mean? In the example of when we get a loan, we talk about, in that example of Forest View, we took the number of, the total amount was $4,000 a year that we were making. $4,092. We divide that into the the down payment plus the repair cost, which was $21,500, thank you. So we take 4,092 divided by 21.5, that comes out to be 19%. So if we take that same number of 4,092 and we add in, we actually had $4,000 of appreciation. Does everybody understand how I got 4,000 of appreciation? 5% of 82,000. That's actually $8,000, a little bit over $8,000 divided by that 82.5. Let's call it 8,000 divided by 82,500. Yeah, that comes out to, oh, that's not right. 8,000. No, I'm doing that backwards. That's why 82.5 divided by. Why am I doing that wrong? It is $4,000 in monthly profit plus.
You're not using the cash that you put in, you're using the value.
off the 21.5, correct, thank you. 8,000 divided by 21.5, it's about 37% actually. So that's what the cash on cash return, does anybody not understand what I just said? We're using the appreciation plus the cash on cash return. So 37% is what we're getting on our money. So it's definitely achievable for 25%. I think at a minimum, we can even strive for higher. But I don't like using like 10% appreciation numbers, even if we're seeing that, because we know that's not sustainable over the long term. If we get 10% this year, we might get 0 next year. All right, so we've got 37%. We're going to do 20% year 0. We've got 20%. If we do our 3.6 year, I'm sorry, 25%. What's 25 divided by the rule of 72?
2.88, 2.9.
Already ahead of me. 2 point what?
2.88.
2.88 years. So this is at 2.88. John, can you multiply 2 times 2.88 and keep doing that for me?
2 times 2.88. It's 5.76.
Add another one.
11.52.
Sorry, we need to do 5.76 plus 2.88.
5.76 plus 2.88.
Yep.
Then 8.64.
8.64, add another 2.88.
11.52.
1.6 million. So in 12 years, if you start off with $100,000 in real estate today of money spent, that is not total purchase price, but you have to either have $100,000 of equity, you will get that 1.6 million in 11.52 years, as long as you are making 25%, including appreciation. So what does that look like? Your first 100,000, at the end of the year, you are going to have, what's the total amount? What's 25% of, you're gonna have $25,000, right? That you will need to spend at the year, at the end of year 1. So how do we do that? Let's say you buy in cash a $100,000 house to make it easy. We have to then spend $25,000 because we know that we're making about $8,000. We need it by the end of the year. We need to hit that $25,000 number. At the end of year 2, we still have to spend $25,000 on the next one, and so on and so forth. So let's go back to spending the 25. If we're doing that, we would actually, I'm sorry, we would have to do 4 homes with $25,000 down payment. That's the way it would work out. So we would do times 4 homes. The first year we're buying 4 at $25,000. I'm gonna have to break this down one more time, guys. No, we've got 15 minutes here. So let's do this math. We've got $25,000 for down payments. What is the 4,000? John, what was the profit on 4 of those $82,000 houses?
I'm sorry, said the profit
The
one.
Forest View, how much was that?
4092.
4092. Can somebody do that times 4 for me? You're then going to have, what was it?
Roughly 16 for, whatever that means.
So 16,400, and then we have appreciation of it was 4,000 times 4. 16,000. So that is what we are getting in return by the first year. So we would need 4 of the Forest Views, I'm sorry. So you guys probably can't see that. So that's a total amount of 32,400, right? sorry, I jumped around a lot there. Let me slow that down. So we have a profit of income from the rentals of $4,092 after the first year of buying 4 investment homes, or we are at 4 investment homes, or we have, we're getting 25% on our numbers. Somehow we're getting 25%, which is what we're seeing. We're actually seeing above that with this calculation, including the 5%. Now in cash that we actually received, we only received this $16,000. So at the end of year 1, how much do we have to figure out that the gap between what we have to spend and where we are? So the 25, we need $9,000 additional to spend, right? Because we were making 25% minimum. We can either do that by pulling the equity line and getting the appreciation out of it, or we actually have to inject cash at the end of the year. So if you're doing this, could you end up spending an extra $9,000 out of pocket? Absolutely. Now, that's very simple to do while we're here. The challenge is when we're down here, we have to pull equity lines of credit, and there are banks that will do that. I know I jumped around there. Does anyone have any questions on what that looks like, the rule of 72?
I did not just follow what you did. I
All
get
right.
that you're saying that you buy 4 houses and you're basically putting
Great,
25,000.
so let's look at 4 of those forest views.
Okay.
Okay, how much money am I, I'm spending $100,000 in down payments.
Okay.
Follow that?
Mhm.
Plus repairs. We said, how much was it, John, in purchase price? It was 16.4 plus
Plus the 5,000.
$5,000, 21.5, right? So we have the funds to buy 4 properties with $100,000. Or again, you've got $100,000 of equity that you're making 25% return on.
So then are you saying at the end of the year, you need to reinvest a certain amount to keep that rule of
Correct.
72
So
going?
we need to reinvest 16,400 plus the difference between our rate of return and that, which is 25%. So all you have to do that first year, once you've spent the 100,000, is either pull an equity line to extract the $16,000 of equity that you have, or you have to take an additional $9,000 or whatever the gap is between this and 25% and actually pay that to duplicate itself. You guys need me to repeat that again? I'm getting a couple of nods and a couple of what are you talking about, Eric? Got it. All right, I buy 4 of those properties on Forest View. Okay? How much money out of pocket am I, approximately?
Well, they're not, you said 82, but you could say
I-
400,000.
Add back to 21.
21,
Oh.
can we fit that into 100?
Yes.
We need to make a minimum of 25% on our money. Now, we know through the rents, we calculated $4,092 for the year times 4 properties gives us $16,000 of profits we put in our pocket after all expenses are paid. Everybody follow that?
Mhm.
Now, we have to put that in a separate account or divide that on the side. We've got to keep that off to the side. Then we also made on 4 properties that they go up in value by 5% per property.
Yes.
And that's 5% off the 100,000 or 5% off our purchase price? Correct. 5% off our purchase price per property is about $4,000. Correct. On 82, 5% of 82,000 is about $4,000. So that we have an extra 16 grand. That's where we got our 25%. But the problem is, right, because these two together actually are 32%. We want to reinvest 32%, or our goal was a minimum of 25. Right, but we are not reinvesting our appreciation, right? Not unless we buy more properties with that appreciated money. So we either have to come out of pocket with an additional, we said 25,000 was our goal. We take our 16.4 and we get, is that 8,600? Yeah. So we either have to come out of pocket with $8,600 plus reinvest all of the money that we made, and we will make 25% doing that model over on the second year, third year, fourth year, fifth, 2.88 years down and 5.76. We have to make sure by the end of every year, we are reinvesting 25% of our total net worth and our values. I know that's a little bit more complex, and I've done like whole sessions on the rule of 72. Deborah, did you understand at that time? Good. So that's the model we can go off of. You can start at a smaller model, but make sure that whatever the investment at the end of the year, including appreciation, is reinvested. That's where you can make large returns. So you have to build that gap. If it's 9,000 the first year, that's easy. You can't do that with income once you're up to $1 million, because now we're investing $250,000 a year. We've got to figure out a way to bridge that gap. So we've got a couple minutes left. I'm open to any Q&As, any questions you guys have, or any other ahas that you guys want to share. Very good. Well, I think we'll end it there. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. We are going to be doing some other coaching at 5:30. If you guys need any, if you want to jump in on that, go ahead and shoot me a text. We're happy to open it up to whoever wants to be there. Thanks for coming. Hopefully you guys are able to implement some things. Go out there and go buy some investment properties.